And now, live from the beach, H114, it's Mr. Little. What a relaxing day. Nothing like not having any kids to deal with. One please, sir, one. Thank you. Whoa, bro. Dude, this is a chapstick, not a straw. Unbelievable. Is this just whipped cream in water? And I can't believe the service here. I'm furious. What are we gonna do? Oh, hey. It's you guys. I miss you. How about we learn something? As friends. The beach. Goodbye. Here we go. It's Google Classroom. I don't believe it. No. Look, guys, all this stuff we're going to learn today about Unit 1, geography, nature, and its perspectives, namely the beach. All right, so here we go. I'm going to post this in a few minutes, and you guys are going to do it in order, but we're going to start with key concepts. So take a look at all of these things, and I'll stop talking in this stupid voice. All right, so Unit 1 is all about just general concepts that we already covered. There's never been an FRQ on it in the past. It just sort of weaves in the basic concepts and applies them to other units. So for example, like scale. If we're looking at scale for like agriculture, we might look at a huge commercial farm making wheat, and then compare that to the scale of like a local rice farmer in Vietnam. So that's basically what you're doing here with Unit 1. You're kind of weaving in these general concepts. We have diffusion as well, which we talked about quite a bit throughout each of the units. We're going to go over map projections again, which we did on the very third day of school, second day, something like that. And then we're going to go over regions and different vocabulary terms. So this is kind of just like big review. I figured I'd go through the PowerPoint with you guys. So yeah. If anyone has any questions, just post them on Google Classroom, and I'll try to answer them. So let's see here, guys. Let's get learning with something fun. What do we have? Yes, I've always loved to learn geography. Okay, starting with PowerPoint 1. I'm just going to briefly go over this with each of you guys, or each of the slides, I should say. So scale, right? We look at something kind of very small, very local, your yard, and then zoom out, and then we get your home. If we pull up Google Classroom, or if we just go on Google Maps, right, we can see the United States, North America, and then we can zoom in on Garden City, Kansas over here, and all of a sudden our scale has changed. What applies to Spruce Street in Kansas might not apply to everybody in the United States. So pretty simple topic. And we'll keep going. All right. So let's start with map projections. If you guys remember at the beginning of the year, I had you cut apart a globe, right? And you had to lay it across a flat surface, a 2D plane. And it's impossible, right? You can't do that without some issues, because what we're doing is we're taking a 3D object and we're trying to flatten it out on the 2D plane, right? I've got my lovely map of all the places I've traveled, and it's 2D. And so if we go on Google, right, Greenland isn't really this big, but because we have a projection, we're trying to keep the shape of Greenland look exactly like it does in real life. So that means the size gets heavily distorted. So the reason for this is pretty obvious. We've already explained it. But it matters a lot what projection you use. You're probably not going to be tested on what specific types of projections are. You just have to remember this concept. And I'm making you do like 3 of them because they're pretty important in terms of just the general scope of geography, but not necessarily what they're going to ask you on the AP test. All right, so just as a quick like hammer this fact in, we've got the true size of, if you guys remember this website, if we took Greenland and we pull it down towards the equator, right, it's not bigger than Africa like it appears to be. And this is again because we're distorting it based on size and shape. This is also, the Mercator map is also great for navigation. So all you had to do was basically like, oh yeah, let me line up where I'm going with these grids, and I had a secant and a compass, and it was pretty easy to use it for like ship navigation. Then you also have like political reasons why maps get made, and this is just a general concept to cover again. Normal maps that we've seen, the United States is going to be in the top left. We read from the left to the right. This is going to be the first thing we see. And so, like if Brazil is here or Australia are really prominent in the center, those maps are going to appear more important politically. And look at what we've done with old Russia here. We shrunk it. We took the largest country in the world and made it look like it is not really important. So let's move on. All right. This one's pretty cool and it's relevant for what we're doing now, right? Something called time-space compression. We're shrinking the time distance between location because we have new transportation methods and new communication methods, right? I'm talking to you through a webcam at my house. And we're doing that because we have an infrastructure of cables laying across the entire country for internet. In the past, you have like TV with satellite. You have radio to broadcast messages verbally. Going way back, you have the first printing press and books. And that allows information to spread a lot faster. And it doesn't necessarily create barriers. It usually removes barriers for people to get access to certain things like manufacturing or information. So planes is another example. And because over time we keep developing these new technologies, the friction of distance right here tends to be less, right? I'm not like writing these lessons through mail or giving your bus driver packets and then you're picking them up from your bus driver. You're looking at it online through Google Classroom, probably within minutes, I hope, of me uploading this lesson. So basically space and time are pretty important facets, and level of interaction that you have when the distance is a lot shorter is going to be a lot higher. So if we can reduce the distance, like talking in a video, then the interaction theoretically should be significantly higher. Like Amazon, for example, they've reduced the amount of distance it takes for their goods that they buy from other countries to put in their warehouses. That way you guys can order on Prime and it gets there within like 24 hours, which is crazy. But if it's something really far, like a friend that you have that moved away, and you don't interact with them that often, it's because of the distance is significantly higher. All right. Cultural ecology, it's really simple. How do humans adapt to the environment? If it's really hot, right, we're going to build like shaded areas. Makes sense. Or we're going to develop something called sunscreen. Oh yeah. Living it up. Look at that. My nose is already done. We covered environmental determinism at the very beginning of the year. And that was showing basically that humans will create things based on the environment around them. And we kind of said that this was like a joke idea. that made sense in the past. For example, if you live near a river valley, right, you might have a better agricultural system, but it doesn't really fit into like human ideas, right? So just because the Chinese invented gunpowder or something that could be used as gunpowder doesn't mean they're going to create guns. In fact, they use it for fireworks, right? So what we counter environmental determinism with is possibilism. And what we did was we watched the Papua New Guinea video. It's on Google Classroom, like way, way, way back at the beginning. All right. So next up, we have geospatial data, and that's taking information that we find on Earth about humans and the environment, and then aggregating it and putting it into a system that makes sense to us. So, for example, I have here on my desk my Census 2020 form, right? I'm going to fill this out, and it's going to collect a whole bunch of information, and it's required by law every 10 years. Everyone in the United States has to do it. Census 2020 form. And it's going to collect information about my race, my gender, what I identify with, my ethnicity, how many people are living at this house. And basically what the government does, the census, is they take it and then they figure out, all right, where are our representatives going to be based on population growth, and that matters for voting. They use it for where they put certain vital resources, like are people in this area impoverished? Is there a connection that we can find with their education levels? Is there a connection that we can find with their ethnicity or their gender? And then we use that information to hopefully better the world, right? So, for example, where do people who speak Chinese live? Or how common is poverty in each county? And you can actually, there are websites that show you your life expectancy based on zip code. So for example, 21409 is my zip code. Oh, cool, no data. Let's try 21061, which is North County. So they don't have, I'd have to enter a complete address, I guess. But Anne Arundel County writes 79.16 years, Maryland 79.2, and then the country as a whole is about half a year younger in terms of life expectancy, or will live to that point. Let's see if I 10 East First Ave. Cool. Well, anyway, we use the census to find stuff like that and how we can make life better. There are even things that do like subway stops. So one thing that you guys probably use every day is GPS, right? So we have satellites out in outer space, and they're collecting signals that ping from your phone, and then they triangulate your position with a bunch of other satellites. We use American satellites, European satellites, they're called Galileo, and then GLONASS, which is the Russian system. And we're able to precisely find our location, and that helps us basically navigate. The next time you use Google Maps, you can thank GPS for that. But the process of using Google Maps is not just GPS. It's called Geographic Information Systems. So what you guys do, right, is you want to say, all right, how far is it to Walmart? And then the system will also look at how high you're driving upwards, like altitude. It'll tell you your expected time based off of that information, because going upwards and then downwards in the span of a mile, right, is going to be more distance than a flat mile, right? And then things like traffic, it's going to measure other people's speeds going through the area. It's going to measure if there's road blockage and how long it'll take if it routes you around a different way. And there are so many other things, right? We use this for espionage, we use it for the military, and like tracking weather data. And that's the whole thing put together is called GIS, Geographic Information Systems. So that does it for this first PowerPoint, and we'll transition into the second PowerPoint, which is here. All right. So types of diffusion. I can't remember if I did this activity with you guys this year. but basically there was a outbreak of cholera in London in 1884, not 1984, and they couldn't figure out why people were getting sick. Each of these black boxes is a case of someone getting cholera, and they found that the brewery had no cases of cholera, which is interesting because they're brewing beer there, and they found out that the water was contaminated. There was a lot of fecal matter runoff in London at the time. They didn't have a sewer system. And they found out because the brewery was boiling water in the process of making beer, it got rid of the bacteria in the water, right? But in the meantime, all these poor people were dying and getting sick of cholera. So it's a little terrible. But then they found out, oh, hey, like the water pump that everyone's using in this area has all this bacteria, and now we can fix that. So this is something called contagious diffusion, right? Because everybody within the area is kind of getting it, and it's like a rapid spread from the water. I won't make a coronavirus connection. All right. So the other types of diffusion, so here's like the contaminated water source, this green circle, and then it branches outwards to these other people. Maybe they're bringing water to their neighbors, or maybe it's going down the pipes in the surrounding area, which would be contagious. So other types, we've got hierarchical. So let's see. I don't have anything on my desk. It's a spread of ideas from the elite or authority figures downwards. Actually, I have my two passports. One's old, this one's new. This one has all my my cool stamps, right? Travel used to be something that was reserved for the elite. You had to be very wealthy to travel, whether it was like on ships 300 years ago or on planes 70 years ago, right? It was a big experience. You needed, even now, right? You need a lot of money. And sort of slowly over time, that concept becomes a lot cheaper because more and more people like want to live like the wealthy people, and new eventual technologies emerge that make things cheaper, such as very small seats and crowded headroom. You're flying like a box, and so that kind of spreads downwards. Another really good example is like Beats headphones, right? Because people saw celebrities wearing it, athletes wearing it. LeBron James would walk in before games during warm up. People were like, I need Beats. And now the new one, I'll amend this, is what you guys are probably saying out loud. AirPods. It's stupid. It just looks cool, right? Like, so people buy them. Hierarchical diffusion. Another good one is that the state superintendent of schools, Karen Salmon, I think, right, told the superintendents for each county, the 25, 26, that schools would be closed, who told the principals, who told us, and then you guys can't come to school, yay. Or, what we're supposed to do with e-learning, like the directives will come down the chain. There's also reverse hierarchical, where it goes up the chain. Stimulus diffusion. So we're taking the underlying concept and spreading it somewhere in the world. What does that mean? Let's say I have my, beverage here of now melted whipped cream in water. Let's say there's a society out there, a culture that doesn't like dairy products. It's against their culture to drink dairy. So you might make an alternative for them, but you still will have whipped cream. McDonald's spreading to India, right? The concept of fast food, a burger, but they don't eat beef, right? Because cows are sacred in Hinduism, so gotta make something. You can come up with a veggie burger or impossible burger or whatever. That's stimulus diffusion. And then the last one, which is probably the easiest one for everyone to understand, is relocation diffusion, right? So goods spreading around the world. Pizza coming from Italy to us. Trying to think of something else. tea, right? The British had to go across the entire world through their colonization efforts to find the best tea, and then they bring that back with them. And it's like a huge cultural event. Afternoon cup of tea. I got my lovely Great Wave mug here from Japan. Also, guys, I have my morning oatmeal bowl. Never forget. So this is how you also spread religions, or like things like the Silk Road, or even coronavirus, right? People relocated because they moved on planes. Sometimes these things overlap, right? So like obviously a virus is going to be contagious diffusion, but in a lot of ways it's not contagious for the global community unless people are relocating or moving about, diffusing things that way. So hopefully that's pretty easy for you guys there. And the last thing we're going to do is review regions. So I have here a map of Europe, and it's the first degree of each European leader in 2017. So for example, Angela Merkel of Germany has a doctorate in physics, and her first degree, actually no, her doctorate's in like something with chemistry, but her first degree I guess would have been in physics. So this is just a map of Europe with that extra feature. But if we look at some different regions of Europe, it's going to make more sense here in a second. I don't know why I'm covering this slide. So we have something called a formal region or uniform region. It's a place where people tend to share one or more distinctive characteristics. So for example, if you live in France, guess what? You're French. That's a formal region. If you live in Maryland, you're a Marylander. Oh my God. That's also a formal region. So it's like a general concept. Sometimes it's incredibly precise, like nationality, for example, like American or French or German. Sometimes it's just like, oh yeah, the people in that area are Ravens fans. So for example, each state has a demonym, right? I'm a Texan, or I'm an Alabamian, Mississippian. How do you say Arkansian? I guess Arkansasian, and that's pretty straightforward. Formal regions. Functional or nodal regions are regions focused around a central point, so like a train station, or if we have North County High School pulled up here in my trusty Google map. I want full screen. I don't want this presenter view crap. Display settings. There we go. So North County High School, right? A functional or nodal region would be Food Lion. This is the grocery store for a lot of people in the surrounding area. Royal Farms Lindico Market does not count. Neither does this gourmet food market. It's just someone's house. So the people in this surrounding area are going to use Food Lion. They could also go across over into Route 2. Maybe they go to Aldi. Maybe they go to Giant. The ShopRite closed. Rest in peace. There's Costco, Walmart, Target's over here. So a lot of different grocery stores clustered in this one area. But for the people on this part of 97, you're probably going to Food Lion. And this causes things like food deserts. For example, there are some people who can only really go to like gas station convenience stores, and they're called food deserts. We're going to review that more during the agriculture unit. But basically, they don't have access to fresh food. So they eat things like Doritos, or they eat things like, I don't know, animal crackers. And so that leads to nutritional problems. But we'll cover that later. And then we have perceptual and vernacular regions. They exist in the minds of the people. And so, let's see, do I have any cool... No, I don't. I'll just do, here we go, the wizards. I can see the minds of all of you. Run! Legolas! Save me. So, this is a map of the United States South. In our head, we think of like yeah, this is what we would call the South, right? Like some of you might not include Texas. I probably wouldn't include Florida. Um, some people even include Maryland as part of the South. And, you know, they can do that, I guess. But it's a perceptual region. Um, what we think exists. It's like a mental map. So let's do some practice here. We've got 3 regions: formal, which is a distinctive characteristic; functional, characteristic that dominates at a central point, and as you go outward, it's less and less used. So, for example, like the Food Lion, if I live next to the Walmart, right? Why am I going to go to the Food Lion unless I really need an item? So the further you are away, the distance decay thing coming back, the less you use it. And then perceptual mental maps. So we've got generic names for soft drinks. We've seen this map many times: pop, Coke, soda. This would be, what is it? Tell me, anyone? Oh, it's a formal region, right? So the people in this area will speak pop or say pop for fizzy soft drink, or they'll say Coke in these states in the South, or we'll say the correct term soda on the East Coast and California and Arizona and parts of Nevada. This one is what games are showing on ESPN for college football. And so based on the schools playing and the regions that they're in, you'll see a certain football game. There are 4 different ones here. So this would be wow, good answers, everybody. It's, again, a formal region. But so they share a characteristic, but it can also be a sort of functional region. And what I mean by that is, let's review. It's a region focused on a central point, and it diminishes as you go outward. So, for example, one of the schools playing is Penn State, which is located, if you look at my mouse cursor, right here. The further you go away from Penn State, the less likely you are to interact with watching its football culture, more than likely. But if you are in that area, you're probably going to see that. They also have Minnesota, right? So they're 2 geographical regions that are close. I'm pointing at Michigan, sorry. Minnesota's up here. So they see the games. But as you go further away, right, they're not going to show those games in California when you can watch Cal play UCLA. So it's a little bit of both. This one's a map of like sports fans, or football fans, I should say, within the area. It's not precise. This one's a couple as well. It can be a formal region, right? I'm a Ravens fan, surrounded by a bunch of other Ravens fans. But it can also be another functional region. Like as you go further away, you'll run into Redskins fans. So the farther you're away from Baltimore, the less likely you are to be a Baltimore Ravens fan. And then this one is also perceptual, because it's like, if we could imagine if I told you to draw a circle where Ravens and Redskins fans exist, this would be a pretty good circle. But I can guarantee you there are Ravens fans that live on the Eastern Shore, and there are also going to be Redskins fans that live in Baltimore. So, last one, or actually we'll do a couple more. We've got the Durham News Distribution. Durham's a city in North Carolina. That's where Duke is. And so this would be a formal region, right? These are the people that get Durham news. It would also be a functional region, because guess what? As you move further away, like Raleigh isn't necessarily going to care about Durham news. Pretty easy. This is a map of all the colleges in America that are kind of really big, and where their sports fandoms are, or their general following. So this would be more of like a perceptual thing. So we have, like in Texas, like 8 different schools, right? And because of where the geographical positions of these schools are going to be, right, the perception of where the majority divide is going to be makes it perceptual. So for example, Maryland cuts into part of Delaware. If you can see that over there. And there are probably UD fans that live in southern Delaware, but there are probably going to be more Maryland fans, and that's what someone's perception was. And then we've got another perceptual map. Right, do we call the area that Maryland's in the East, the Mid-East, the Mid-Atlantic? Some people say it's part of the South. Would we say Georgia is part of the South or the Southeast? Or is it going to be Midwest even? Or the Deep South? I forgot about that one. Southwest, including Hawaii. I don't think anyone classifies Hawaii as Southwest. And then we've got like the Pacific Northwest, which is generally how you hear it. No one ever really says the northern United States. Sometimes they say the Midwest to refer to these states up here as well. So it's just a general perception in your head of what these like categorized thoughts would be. And then other than that, I don't have anything for you guys in terms of the lecture. So make sure when you go on Google Classroom, you do the Quizlet first, and you complete the matching, or the gravity, and the matching, and then this is the FRQ that I want you guys to do. And just to give you guys a breakdown of what's being shown here, there are 4 maps. This is the Electoral College map for 2016. Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. 63 million people voted for her. Donald Trump lost the popular vote. 60 million people voted for him, but he still won the Electoral College vote, which means he became president. And you need 270 electoral votes, right? This is why the census is important, because we have to know where those electoral votes end up. So looking at this really quickly, it might seem like a lot of the country voted red, but if you remember, there aren't a lot of people that live in Montana. There aren't a lot of people that live in the Dakotas. And so the land area doesn't vote, right? It's the people. And so there are a lot of people that are clustered in California, and there are a lot of people that are clustered in the Northeast. So that's how Hillary was able to win the popular vote, but then lose the electoral vote because Donald Trump was able to get sort of a lot of the swing states, and they're smaller in terms of the numbers, right? Like, we've got 3 electoral votes in the Dakotas, but if you add up a lot of these, you get some big numbers. And then let's look at election results by county. There are like 3,042 counties in the United States, or maybe 3,142. I don't know. So you break it down by who won by party. Red is for Republicans, blue is for Democrats. The darker it is, obviously means the more people voted, or the lighter it is, it was kind of a mix. So it looks like there's a lot of red, right? But when we have a county in the middle of Nebraska that has like 5 people and they all vote Republican, it's going to be a dark red. But if we take New York City, which is hard to see, let's see if I do a better one. If we take Los Angeles, there are a lot of people, 4 million people living in LA. A lot of them vote Democrat, so you'll see it's a little darker red. And then that's just the general look of the election by county, which is interesting. We're changing the scale. And then over here, the other maps, we've got ethnic majority by county. I wrote a key down here in the last question, but the blue these are white people, right? And then where different minorities live as a majority in their county. So for example, Los Angeles County has no majority of people. They're kind of split among a lot. And then you have a lot of counties in the Dakotas that are going to be majority Native American, for example. Or along the border with Mexico, there's going to be a huge Hispanic population, simply because that's where a lot of them had to end up after their migration journeys through Latin and South America. And then level of urbanization by county. This means like basically major cities. So if you look at the cities like LA or New York or Baltimore, DC, Philadelphia, these are places that are highly urbanized. And then we look at areas that are very rural. So again, I want you to look at these maps, sort of in your head, overlay them, right? Take the county maps and say, all right, In Nebraska, it's a deep red state, right? No state or no area went for, except maybe Lincoln, voted Democrat, or the capital. And then you look at over here on the map, right? It's predominantly rural. But if we look at the people voting Democrat along the coast of California, this is going to be either smaller metro or large suburban or urban areas, not as much in terms of rural. So there's some overlap. There's a lot of information you can find from these regional maps. And if you guys have any questions, let me know in the Google Classroom, and I'll try to make some cheap green screen for next time. See you guys.